Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Vinny Cavello, and I'm one of the community admins here at the Maintenance Community by Upkeep. We're excited to have you today. We are presented with Andy Gailey joining us for a presentation, Frontline Engagement and Predictive Maintenance. Before we go ahead and get started, I just wanted to share a couple brief notes. During the webinar, I encourage you to utilize the chat and the question section of the webinar platform to submit your questions, have conversation, and engage with the other attendees and our speaker. Afterwards, I'll go ahead and let you know there is our Slack group. And within our Slack group, you can go ahead and contact Andy directly following the conclusion of the webinar and continue the conversation there. Please also note that the webinar recording will be available tomorrow, and I'll go ahead and post that in the Slack group once it's available. If you're not already a member of the Maintenance Community Slack group, I will share the link in this chat and you can go ahead and join us. And we are also now on Instagram, which would be great if you go ahead and give us a follow. And with that, I will hand this over to Andy.
Thank you very much, Vinny. One of the things I'll say up front here, my presentation, when I'm sharing it, I can't see any of the chat for some reason. So I've got my presentation in front of me. So what we'll do, obviously, I'll engage with the chat and Vinny can take the notes about questions for the piece at the end. And hopefully it won't be too boring, but it will drive some questions from you. So this presentation is obviously, I wanted to talk about people because I think people are probably one of the most important things that we have in our operations, and also about how we should think about engaging our people with an eye on being more predictive in what we do and not just reacting to things that go on around us. So it's about people. It's about supporting your productivity, and it's if you have lots of questions at the end of it, that's a really, really good thing because it will have made you think about it. So previously, my background is I worked in the PepsiCo business for just over 20 years. Then 6 years ago, I formed Uptime Consultant Limited to go out and to use, I wanted to be quite inclusive. I wanted to look at lubrication, predictive techniques, training people, maintenance strategy, criticality, RCM, RCA, and all of those tools together to try and impact people's reliability. So it was the largest, still is, I think, the largest snack food plant in Europe. I worked in here in the UK. We were carrying out proactive and predictive tasks to get us from a position where we were in very, very reactive atmosphere to one of control, and that delivered six-figure sums to the business year on year during the 10 years I was involved with it. So it's about a journey as well. So coming from reactive to a proactive, predictive environment, it will give you the edge on other businesses. So if you do it and your competitor doesn't, then you win. So I'm very, very keen on prediction and being proactive. And if we look at the traditional kind of preventive tasks, there is space for them, and obviously they'll always be there, those type of PMs that we use day in, day out. But I'm more about targeting those at the things where it's either by compliance or aimed towards a hidden failure. So let's think about why we actually do maintenance. I always do this right at the start. So it's about delivering these to the business. So we should we're not doing maintenance for the fun of it. We are an arbiter of the operations reliability, and we will be asked to prove this at some point during that task. The thing is about the predictive type of sphere. It gets a lot of interest when it's employed in a company, but people, they don't seem to look at preventative tasks in the same way. So you'll find that if you ever start a predictive journey within a factory like I did, all of a sudden everybody's interested in what you're paying back to the company. Although for some reason they don't ask the same questions of the preventive tasks that add little or no value. It's a little strange, but I think what it is that there's just this dichotomy, and people that are involved in prediction of any sort or any condition monitoring will know that this story rings true worldwide. I think is that reactive work is very, very noisy, creates a lot of issues in the operation, and that earns rewards. So people tend to accept that PMs and reactive is par for the course, but then prediction lies underneath it. It's kind of like Cinderella, never goes to the ball, and it removes the reactive noise, but it doesn't get the plaudits that it should. Unfortunately, the heroes of reactive maintenance are always lauded, shall we say, and applauded. So I'm a great believer in this, that these people, so it's not all of the technologies add to people's add to the tools that people can use. So it's the people that make proactive, predictive, or any sort of maintenance work, be that at the technician, operator, or the management level. The operator level is important because they're a key resource that are undervalued and underused in a lot of respects. And if you undervalue and underuse people, usually their self-esteem goes down and they don't think they're worth as much as they should be. And then to engage these people, what you need to do is you need to change that narrative, and that you need to convey in everything that you do and say with them that you're going to engage them as change merchants. And they're very important because they spend the most time with the assets. So if you're I'm talking about more like FMCG or food or automotive, where there's lots of products being used per minute or per hour, and then you've got an operator group that engages with the assets. It could also be in utilities, so it could be out in the field. There could be operators there out in the field in water or gas or utilities that again are used to do minor tasks, but they're not really engaged in much maintenance. So here are just three aspects of why I believe that the operator group in particular is an important group. They spend a lot of time with those assets, and they have a lot of knowledge about the operating context. So when they're making snack food every day by the hundreds of tons a week or thousands of bags a minute, they are engaging with the operation. They understand some nuances that the maintenance technician come along probably won't get straight away. So I like to call them the front line because that's where it's at. If you're in this type of operation where you're manufacturing things, where it happens.
Andy, I apologize for interrupting. Yep. Should your screen be shared?
Yes.
I believe it may have been disconnected.
Okay. No, I've said all I can see is my full screen at the moment. Can you see that slide?
We cannot.
Okay. Let me just. Did you see the other screens?
I don't believe it was fully connected.
Okay, let me just. You can definitely see that there, can't you?
Yep, we can see it now. Just
let me just start at the top. Did somebody flag that up?
I just connected it, so we can see it, and that's great.
Okay, yeah. So obviously that was the intro slide, and then about why we do maintenance in the first place, about our people making all the difference, and the the 3 points of why they are important, because they're actually there and they understand the operating context. And then here we are, we're back at this screen here, which is slide 4. And about where the front line is where it actually happens. So they said they're ideally placed at the front line. So why would they, if they wanted some betterment, why wouldn't they get involved? So the 2 top hexagons here talk about why we would want to engage our operators, and then we go into we as humans, we're going to have to try and sell this to people, that this is the thing that they want to do. We're not going to force them to do it. We're going to ask them, would they like to be part of this group? So we're going to say to them, well, we're going to add to your skill level, because there is a lack of skills. So we're going to add to your skill level, and we're going to support you, and you're going to learn more about your assets. And if we, have a mentor with you, or a buddy who's maybe a maintenance guy, we can both learn from each other about our assets. And I learn a lot about clients' assets when I go and I engage with the operator group. And some clients kind of question that when I go in, and I don't really want to spend a lot of time with the maintenance or operations manager. We'll say hello, we'll talk about the process, but I don't want to speak to the operators, because the operators are where the real stories are. And the thing we've got to do is people don't do something for no reason at all. So we're going to have to, at some point, we're going to have to talk about reducing their workload. You're going to have to say you're going to add more skills, more knowledge to them, that you're going to make their life better, and that you're going to do it by reducing their workload in some way. So if you come along and say, well, I'm going to dump a load of tasks on you to do, and then just wave goodbye and walk away, they're not going to do them. That's not the way you're going to engage with your workforce. So what you've got to do is you've got to have not only these thoughts in place and these conversations, but you've got to have a plan. You've got to have a robust plan to go and deliver to them with your people, not to them. So obviously you're going to have to engage in training. Some of the things I do with operators and maintainers is train some skills that they're things that aren't in training manuals. And some of the skills, obviously, that are taught about in the Toyota principles are about observing, and how do you get to a goal without training? Well, there's no way you can do that. So you don't go and jump in a car and drive it. Well, you can, but probably crash it. You go and have some adequate training. So observations are really strange ones. So if you ask people, do they take notice of what goes on around them? There'll be lots of people have different ideas of what they mean by going looking. So people look, but they rarely observe. So you can get operators sometimes that have no idea of what's going on around them, and it's because they haven't been taught to observe. So there are things you need to do with people to get that over. Training people about, so if you're going to train people to do maintenance or especially predictive, you're going to have to start talking about failure modes. You're going to have to talk about how they've observed their particular assets failing over time, what their anecdotal stories are about how things failed, and maybe even that's the way you introduce mini RCAs. You talk about how things happened in the past, and you bring some evidence forward to the future, and you see if you can get rid of that that concern for the future. And also, we need, after they've observed and taken notice of what's going on, and they've got an understanding about what might be happening, they need to know, where's the key point in time where they need to take some action. How do they escalate their findings? How do they get to the next point? So yeah, it's very nuanced, and it's usually a person-to-person thing you have to do. You can't do it over a webinar, unfortunately. I get, this is probably the most often asked question I get from people that are clients or prospective clients about condition monitoring and preventive maintenance. So they usually come to me and they've got lots and lots of preventive maintenance to carry out, but they have also lots and lots of unplanned downtime they're not happy with. And they'll say, is there one approach we can just, copy paste and it'll fit all? And my answer is no. There is not one approach you can take, and every single operation will have even cells within that operation that you might want to adjust slightly. So some might be more applicable to some sort of predictive technology, whereas it wouldn't apply in another. So I often talk about those things, about how you think about the benefits of any condition monitoring or predictive strategy. So starting with the plan helps. So if you can involve your operators at an early stage and actually bring them into the conversation, they might actually have some really good information about how things have panned out in the past, things that they've seen or maybe tried in the past. I'll usually say to people, consider RCM principles. I'm an advocate of reliability-centered maintenance. I think that even if you decide not to use any of the principles in RCM, you need to go and study what it is and read the book, and even have a short. I usually spend a couple of hours in some of the workshops I do, and we can't talk about prediction and lubrication without RCM. That's one of my stipulations. We have to cover it because it puts together the tools of asset care and being proactive and predictive together. So it's my preferred methodology. I've seen it work. I've got evidence of it working. There's plenty of stuff out there that can tell you how to do it or how to apply it. Criticality of the assets is very important. So sometimes I've been into plants and I'll say, tell me what's your top 3, those critical assets. And they'll say everything's critical, everything's important. Well, that can't be the case. So then I'll say to them, okay, well, how critical is the engine in my car compared with the rear window? It's obviously more critical than a rear window winder. So understanding the criticality of the assets and where they sit within your maintenance will actually, these 2 things that are on this screen will actually frame your maintenance strategy. You can frame your maintenance strategy with understanding criticality and applying RCM principles. With targeting, I go back again to targeting in known failure mode. So that this is everything about prediction. To me, is all about understanding failure modes. If you can get the operator group with the maintainers, with the operations involved in this work at the outset, then you'll have the best outcomes. People who don't involve operations and safety and engineering and the operators and the maintainers together in one room, they generally fail. So there's usually a piece of work to do ahead that gets everybody on the same page. And then you can go down a nuanced approach with the maintainers and with the operators, and then the management can probably step aside for a while and then can come back for a refresh when some of the good work's done. So criticality studies, going back to that, I am involved in criticality studies, and if anybody wants to reach out, I can prove that they work. And they don't take, a lot of people say they just take too much time, and but they can be, you can do a criticality light on one, if you have one specific line or asset to do. So let's go and have a little bit of a look at predictive maintenance. So some people say, why would we do that, and who's going to do it, and how are we going to do it? Predictive maintenance is not a phrase I particularly like, and I would say this. I prefer to have maintenance is about keeping things in the state that you require them to do the thing you bought them for in the first place. And predictions about doing something to garner signals that will alert you to what's going to happen in the future. So it's going to give us warning of potential failure. So if we can have a warning of potential failure, then we can put something in place to mitigate that. And I would say that rather than call it predictive maintenance, it's the earliest form of reactive maintenance. We need a signal to tell us what to do. In fact, we need more than one signal. I would say you need more than one piece of evidence. Usually you may have an anecdote from an operator who says, I've heard something. Then you go and apply some vibration or ultrasound or thermography. And then once you may find an ultrasound reading, and then you might want to take a loop sample. And usually I would try and marry at least two aspects together. So who's going to do it? So trained personnel. So I'd say it's not about having a specialist, having one person own it all, or just a small team of people own it all. Because if that happens, when that person leaves the business or those people go into different teams, your whole predictive strategies down the drain. So involving everybody and then training people in certain aspects. By doing that, usually out of the group, you'll find people that are really switched on. And I've done this with operators before, and I've had 12 people in a room. And by the end of a 6-hour session, there's 3 or 4 people in there. You can just see they've got it, they understand it, and they seem to be the arbiters of change. And there's not a negative bone in a body, and they understand that they can help other people understand it. Go back again to identify a mode of failure. So if you do any prediction whatsoever, you need to understand how things fail. If you don't understand how things fail, you can't apply any predictive maintenance to it. That's my take on it. It's worth revisiting observation. The operators and the maintainers and everybody has got to know what normal looks like. So by observing, you know what normal looks like, then you can see change in the future. There's some stuff from Toyota that I read some years ago where one of the founders of Toyota drew a circle on the floor in the middle, and where there was a transfer line causing problems, and he stood there for 8 hours and just watched, and he observed what was going on to get a really deep idea of what was going on with that asset. I couldn't have done it for 8 hours, but he did. So I always sell it as well as it's not a black art. It's all about our senses as humans, and we're going to accentuate those senses by using some sort of technology. So it's all about what we see, what we hear, what our nose tells us. So for instance, if you look at what we can see, we can obviously observe things happening. We can see maybe grease leaking out of a bearing or a dislodged seal, but we can also use a technology in the future. We could use thermography to actually see the energy emitted from assets to give us an idea of whether it's getting out of its normal range. We use our ears. We can hear things, obviously, within a certain range, but once we get above 20 kilohertz, it's outside of our hearing. So we can use ultrasound. So ultrasound hears those things in the machines that our onboard sensors can't. Our nose will tell us when electrics are burning. So tell them to use the sensors, and then we extrapolate that into technology. Tell them how much value that they bring to this by doing it, because they need to know that they are adding to what's going on. So if they understand that they are not only making the operation better, making their operator's life easier, but they're making it more interesting, and you need to tell them how much that you love them, basically. and make sure you discuss their findings. So don't be, if you think something doesn't matter, don't be dismissive of anything. Everything matters. So you must engage with the operator group and give them time and to discuss the findings on the shop floor. Usually good by the asset, and then instilling them that there's nothing too small to bring up, because it will be that small thing that they bring up that will give you something to go look at to gather evidence and to probably save some unplanned events as well. So my phrase that I use for predictive maintenance is that it's about disparate information and it's collated together to make an informed decision. So it's not about just going and doing some sort of process. It's about making the informed decision to make it valuable. I said before, predictive maintenance isn't just about one signal, it's about many signals. It could be over time to build a trend. There could be a single signal that you get from one technology and then you use another technology, maybe take an oil sample for looking at what the oil's doing. And they're complementary to each other to make informed decisions. As we said before, the senses, look at what the senses do and then extrapolate them to what the predictive tools do for you. So you can get, it's all right saying something vibrates, I touch it and I can feel it vibrating, but if you can put a measure on it and then tell us what it's doing every week or every hour or every 5 minutes, then it becomes a really effective tool. Understand how things break. Again, it's failure modes. Or we don't do any prediction just for the hell of it. We're doing it because we want to mitigate some future event. Don't be happy with staying still. I'm not happy with staying still. I want to, well, my methodology when I was building this predictive strategy at PepsiCo was to build it over a few months and to trial it. And then as I saw things working, I may change tack slightly, or I might take some oil sampling out on one particular asset that just flatlined. You can see there was, you only need to do this thing maybe every quarter rather than every month. And the most important thing about delivering predictive or condition monitoring is reporting the benefits to the business, because if it doesn't pay anything back to the business, it's not worth doing, in my opinion. If there are no benefits, it's not worth doing. So make sure you can prove that, because if you're in the right type of business, they will ask you and you will be asked to prove it. I was asked, in fact, when I was tasked with coming up with a strategy, I was also, one of the top lines was you must provide benefits and report them back quarterly, yearly, by period. Does one trump the other? So again, people ask me, does predictive and preventive, does one trump the other? No, they don't, because they're complementary methods and they form part of a robust strategy. So proactive and predictive are my number one go-to. So if I'm looking at a new asset from a criticality point of view, I'll ask myself, what methodology can I put on this that is proactive and predictive? And then if I see things that failure modes I can't see, or things that I can't use a predictive technology on, then I want to put in a planned preventive type of task. Or if there's a compliance issue, so if there's electrical or gas regs or any sort of other regulation, you obviously need to go and put those PPMs in. If you start with these proactive and predictive tasks and get the operator group involved really early on, they'll feel that they own it. And if they're involved in it they'll become arbiters of what goes on with that. Got some notes here. Yeah, planned preventive maintenance tasks. One of the first things, again, I ask a new client is, how many PPMs have you got on your system? How many have you got timed out? How many have you got active? And how many have you missed? And those levels are usually the missed, and the ones that are timed out are usually in double percentage figures. We're talking kind of 20, 30, 40% missed. Then you've got to ask, the next question is, what value have they added to your business? So you've measured them, you've missed them, what's happened? And sometimes a good strategy is to actually remove those, either put them to sleep or put them to bed, and see what happens. Because assets get degraded a lot by invasive preventive maintenance tasks. It comes out of RCM. It's proven. I've proved it with kind of clean sheet criticalities where we've introduced the maintenance strategy, and we've gone for a very light approach on planned maintenance. And after 18 months, hardly any downtimes occurred that they didn't know about in advance. So assets break, random failures hurt people. Hopefully not people physically, but they hurt companies by having random failures. And we will never, ever get away from some sort of reactive, unplanned work. The thing is, if we can mitigate it, if we do the other stuff good, really well, we can make sure that the reactive, unplanned work is at a low level and causes very little disruption to the business. Obviously, when they do happen, make sure that they cost a lot of time, money, really kind of impacting the operation, and you must RCA them, use root cause analysis, get to at least a place where you understand the failure mode and what happened, and some actions to put in place to stop it happening again in the future, or to make sure that it's at a very low level of happening in the future. Those companies I do go to that have a high level of PM work carried out, and they have a lot of PM work missed, and if they have a lot of reactive and planned work carrying on, then the alarm bells ring straight away. Because you have to ask, then you have to sit there and say, if you're carrying out all of this work you never ever get to do because you haven't got enough manpower, haven't got enough time in the day, why are you carrying it out when you're getting all of this reactive work? This isn't delivering any value to your operation. So great maintenance strategies are a balancing act, and the things we want them to deliver, we want them to deliver maximum availability, and the sooner great maintenance strategies, if you get everybody on board, they work better. I can tell you that. Safety and reliability have been proven to be linked, so operations are more reliable, have a low accident rate, and they're safer. And places that are less safe usually have a lot of unplanned downtime and are not very reliable the way they run. So I would say if I was going, these are two aspects that I targeted when I started doing a predictive, proactive condition monitoring lubrication strategy, is I wanted to sell this to operations managers and to the safety manager. The two most important people in the plant was the ops manager and the health and safety manager. So if you get these two people on your side, your maintenance strategy becomes a lot easier to deliver. Don't accept failure. I'm one of those that I'm really pedantic about it. So it's no good. If you start accepting failure, it reoccurs. And again, I've walked into places where this happens, and they say that always happens, and we always have to do X, Y, and Z to put it right. And it's kind of, it's become custom and practice in their organisation to accept failure. So put it on your top of your desk or something. Don't accept failure. Again, you can only do these things by supporting and training people, and it can be a process that takes years. It's not a quick fix. And it's also about identifying some people are more amiable to adopting the mindset of being proactive and predictive. We've also said target failure modes. I'm going to repeat myself again. Always keep the goal in mind. So there's a goal in mind with a maintenance strategy. So the goal in mind isn't doing vibration analysis or oil analysis or ultrasound or filling in charts and ticking boxes. The goal in mind is the percentage of operational availability and the safety scorecard. They're the top parts of the goal. Whatever your company puts in place, that's the goal that you are striving to achieve. And always don't be happy with the way things are going. So I would say always kind of at least 6 months, go back and revisit it and look at it. I do criticality studies for clients. I always put a date in the diary. We're definitely going to go back in a year. We're going to look at what happened with operationally with their maintenance and how it worked. And then we may make some adjustments within the criticality. They may have introduced new assets for all I know, or they may have had a new setup with their personnel that will impact the criticality. At the moment, the last 2 years, the main thing that's involved in revisiting those criticalities is supply chain. Supply chains have been smashed. So if you need parts now from Taiwan or from the Far East in the UK, you are looking at probably 3 or 4 times the amount of time you would normally have expected. So we've come to a conclusion now. So you can't do anything for nothing. So you need to know what are the benefits and why we should even bother. But why don't we just stay as we are? Some companies I go to, they decide to stay as they are. I don't know whether they're making too much money, but they just decide that the status quo is good. I think it's people don't like change. So if you look at, I look at lots of things around the world, and one of the things I'll be looking at is demographics. Demographics are really against us. So the working population is reducing, the elderly population's increasing, and babies aren't being born. So demographics against us. Skilled trades are in short supply, and guess what? There's no demographic following. There's nobody coming in to fill those boots. So we better look after the people we got. And then we've got to think about what are the alternatives. So there'll be some people that are trying to sell AI and machine learning and all of those glitzy, shiny things that say, well, all this will, robots and everything will solve it all for us. The news is they won't. And the human, us, we still have the best onboard computer that is adaptable with the best set of skills that we can apply to the real world. And some of the things that happen with maintenance need dexterity, fingers, and they need abstract thinking. And AI does not do abstract. We need to think. We can't think along linear lines when we're looking at some of the things we're going to do. And we'll have to consider, as like I said, with condition monitoring, you have to consider lots of different things going on, and then you have to think about what operations want. You can't just stop the line. So many thanks for your time. Sorry about the glitch with the slides. We didn't get to share. So remember, all of this is not about the process of doing these things. It's about what it delivers to your business or your, I wouldn't even say your manager. It's about what you feel comfortable delivering to the business that makes it better. You can find out all about Uptime Consultant on the website at www.uptimeconsultants here at the bottom. You can also contact me through LinkedIn or on the maintenance community. I'm active on there when I get a chance to look at it. So many thanks for TMC and Upkeep for having me today. And let's go to questions, if there are any. Hopefully there are.
There are. There's a few coming through. Would you like me to relay some of these to you?
Yeah, if you can. Yeah, because for some reason, when I share that screen, all I can see is the presentation. I can't see anything else.
Of course. We can see your desktop right now. I don't know if you would like to close the share screen or if you wanted your presentation. There we go.
There we go.
All right. So the first question would be, Andy, can you please explain abstract thinking? AI says that they can predict anything.
Yeah. AI says a lot of things. You need to go and look at what AI does. It does things that it needs inputs that are filtered to give it an idea of what it's looking for in the first place. And the thing is, with abstract thinking, with the human, we get to think on lots of different levels. So if you applied some sort of algorithm to a production plant, first you've got to decide on, somebody's got to decide on which part of the plant you're going to utilize it on. So you're going to ask this thing, what's the most critical thing? And it's going to say the rear window in the car. It's not going to say the engine, because for me, it's been proven over the last few years, they haven't got an idea of what they're doing, because they're using baskets of goods to look at cat photographs or dog photographs. And it's more like a sorting system than providing real benefits. And some of the people are trying to promote AI within the operational environment, and I've had discussions with, I'll say, prove it. Prove to me the benefits that your AI widget does. Now, there's artificial intelligence and machine learning that's used on software platforms and applications that will look at a specific thing. So I work, one of my collaborators is in the predictive field, obviously, and they have data scientists. And what they do is they take information out of things like SCADA networks, mainly. So they plug into SCADA networks and they look for things like power, hertz, voltage drop, all those nuanced things that we tend not to look at as engineers or in prediction, because we tend to look at a physical thing. And what they can do, because they can look at it every 3 or 4 minutes, they get thousands and thousands and thousands. They get lakes of information, but they still have problems understanding what the information actually means. So one of the problems they had was they used to put a massive flag up at 8:05 on a Monday morning. Everything used to go red, and nobody had told them that the plant started at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning. So there's these things that AI is going to struggle with, and humans have this knack for being able to speak to another human, think about what the operation's doing, think about what logistics availability is, understands what might be in the CMMS system. All of these things come together within the human brain that makes it a valuable thing within an operation. This idea from 20 years ago, I was just hearing about this. There's going to be one man and his dog in a factory, and the dog's going to be there to keep the man with somebody to take care of him, so he's got something to do. But it's not happening. What's the next one? System works on other phase reduce such low level management things. Yeah, that's right. So the one there from Ravi, that's a really good one. His concern is that they work so well that you end up putting yourself out of job. Yeah, that's it. My aim as a predictive engineer when I was working for a company was to make myself redundant, and I did. I was We were that good at it that our percentages went from double figures, unplanned downtime, to less than 1%. And we carried that on for about 3 years. That eventually they said, we don't need prediction. So I got to leave the business. So yeah, that's true. But your aim as a predictive maintenance guy should be 0 unplanned downtime. When you walk away, they get a grace period. So 6 months later, the company called me back and said, can you come back? We've done something wrong. So yeah, that's Ravi, you're right. That's what happens. But you should aim to do that. Why not? Why not be that good?
It looks like Ahmed had a follow-up to his AI question. Ahmed said, but with human thinking comes the factor of human error. What do you say?
Well, I'll just say, look at Tesla cars. I mean, I would. Why wouldn't you want human error? That's how we learn. I mean, this is the problem. It's the thing about going and doing these aspects of maintenance is you make decisions based on the information you've got, and you literally try it out. And if it doesn't work, you change and you do something different. So there's lots of human error and a lot of prediction picks up that human error. People using the wrong lubrication, people applying lubrication wrong. But that doesn't, there's no AI or machine learning that's going to come along and replace that. In fact, I think that the story's been lost in that the term AI was kind of hijacked a few years ago into the industry 4.0 bunch of people. But if you go back and you look at what happened at the Dartmouth conference back in the 50s with McCarthy and people like that invented the term artificial intelligence, then you understand it's nothing about what they're talking about now. So all of the AI that the people are talking about now is machine learning, it's data science. And a lot of it is good for universities. That's about all it's good for. When you get it on the shop floor, it falls over, it doesn't work. Ravi's on board, I'm thinking, good. So hopefully Ravi's not in predictive maintenance and he's not going to be out of a job soon. The good news is if you are, so I was okay with leaving the company under that aspect because I got to step outside the company and start my own business. And also I did a lot of business over 2 years on revisiting the company and getting them back on track again. Because they got about 6 months before the biggest major unplanned downtime happened. It was due to them not looking at a really critical motor. That hadn't failed for 20 years. And then all of a sudden they got a massive failure. It was because they removed the prediction and removed the lubrication strategy. We'd never had one of those fail because previously we picked it up and we'd had the nose bearing replaced in planned downtime. So he's a P. That's good. Well done, Ravi. You're a PDM guy. Yeah.
It looked like Moretti had a question.
Hopefully we're connected. If we're not connected, Ravi, get in touch on LinkedIn. My KPIs for all across are based on minimum of 8-20 PM versus failures. Why is it the instruments craft is struggling to achieve? It's because the failures are not predictive. I don't understand that one, but 80-20. I don't know. I can see the ratio's got that 80-20. I believe in Pareto analysis. So the Pareto analysis, when I go into a plan, I'm looking for the 20% of the assets that cause them 80% of their unplanned downtime and headaches. So if you can identify the top fifth of the assets that cause them problems and get those put to bed pretty quick, you can get some quick wins because usually there's 80% of the assets don't really cause any heartache or any headaches. Yeah, so Ravi says his trick has been touting cost savings gained by failures identified from data. That's true. So I said the first thing I was asked to do, PepsiCo, was prove I was saving money. And at PepsiCo, if you don't save money, you don't do the job. So you need to prove that what you're doing at least covers the cost of what you're doing and delivers value. So the first thing I did was I built up a spreadsheet that recorded all of the CMMS raised work orders through prediction into the system, and I had a PDM bracket on it. And then when that work got done in planned, the time that it took to do it in planned, I would extrapolate that and put in a spreadsheet against the asset. And we had a set of figures that would tell us how much that line cost per minute when it was down. And we could extrapolate that and then provide that back to the business on a period or a quarterly or a yearly. I used to do it by period, by quarter, and yearly. And by year, it was over $600,000 per year, year on year. That was me and one other engineer. So it's always good to go back to, because that's where you see some trends and repeat failures in some of the things that happen. And then you can put PDM driving betterment. So you end up maybe re-engineering an asset with a new bearing specification or with a new lubricant specification, and then put that problem to bed. Good evening.
I'd like to go ahead and remind our audience that if you'd like to submit questions in the chat or the questions feature, you're more than welcome to do so.
Yeah, I thought there'd be a question about how to get people switched on, because I find when I go and visit people, they will always, so if you talk to an engineer or maintenance manager or operation manager, they'll say things like, they don't listen to us. And if you go to the operations people, the people that run the plant, they'll say, they don't listen to us. And the communication between the two sets of people within the same factory that work together every day is diabolical. They don't talk to each other. So if the operations and maintenance and engineering and all the support people don't understand what the problems are and the issues are with the operator group, how are they going to engage them? So the first thing you've got to do is engage the operator group. That's why I go straight to operators, engage with them, and talk to them. It's amazing. I have some operators in some factories look at me and go, nobody ever talks to us like this on an equal term, on an equal footing. So one of the first things I'll say is, tell me about what's the problem. Tell me about your issues. Is it, and if they want to tell me about their family or their car or something they got going on at home, yeah, why not listen? If you listen to that, then you can get round to what happens on the transfer line, the production line, or they can't get the right part, or they can't get a maintenance. Somebody's like, we can't get a maintenance technician. I said, well, then you say, well, what is you want a maintenance technician for? Well, we wanted to reboot certain asset. Well, why doesn't somebody train you to do it? Nobody's bothered. So it might be a training need on something very, very simple. When we talk about prediction and maintenance and engineering, we shouldn't put it all in silos. We should think about the whole thing. And the biggest thing in that to get to is the person, and to get them to understand you're there to help.
Right. It looks like the questions have come to a halt. However, if you don't have any other comments, I would just like to remind everybody that Andy is available on Slack. So if you want to continue the conversation, send him over a note. I'm sure he would be willing to follow up and continue the conversation there.
I sometimes have trouble with Slack because I've got so many threads that I'm like, I just have to concentrate on 2 or 3. So
I'll go ahead and I'll tag you in one.
So
you know the exact one, and everybody can follow up.
I've got all of these ones that I've been added to. I tend to just look at the webinars one and the lubrication one, and maybe the shop talk one or anything.
The webinars one is where it's at for this, and I'll
that's good. Yeah, I'll just concentrate on that one then.
All right. Well, thank you, Randy.
Thanks, Ahmed, for coming, and Ravi. Thanks. It's been great. Ravi, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, you must connect, because I think we've been in the same place. Definitely.
Fantastic.
Thanks for supporting me, Vinny. Our first gig together.
Yeah, this was great. And I'd like to thank you again and let everybody know that is still on that Andy has a handful of other webinars with us available on demand. So head over to the maintenance community and view some of his older stuff.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff on LinkedIn and on my website as well that I share freely. So
amazing. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You have a good day as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.